As a late intermediate player, you want to create fresh sounding solos on the fly. You know a lot of chords by now, you've practiced your scales a lot, and you feel like this should be easy, but when you take a lead break, you just freeze up and head back to familiar scale patterns. In this lesson, I'll give you 3 actionable tips to help you create your own acoustic blues solo without freezing up. And we'll put these tips to the test over the complicated chord progression from Nobody Knows You when you're down and out. If you want to sound smart and fully aware of the chords that you're soloing over, then you're going to love this simple idea. Build phrases around the arpeggio. Now, arpeggios, besides being my favorite musical word to say, it's just chord tones. And you may have practiced your arpeggios in various different patterns around the neck, and if not, I recommend that you do. You can find an arpeggio study in the free lesson workbook for this lesson at the link below. The first 3 chords of down and out are C major, E7, and A7. And the arpeggio for each of these chords gives you the set of notes to work from. You'll use other nearby tones to connect positions and your licks, but think of the arpeggio as the boundary. These are the notes to focus on. Let's see this in action in the first 2 bars of my down and out solo. This first phrase is almost entirely arpeggio based, moving us through a C major chord and an E7 chord. So what do we mean by arpeggio? It's just another way of saying chord tones. So I'm playing a C, sliding up to the E, and then the G. And guess what? Those are the 3 notes of a C major chord. There's a C, E, and G. And then notes just repeat when you're in the open position playing these cowboy chords. So there's a C and another E. But the heart of it, those 3 notes, that's what's necessary. That's the C chord, the C, E, and G. Now I am reaching up to the A note, which isn't in the C, and it's not in the chord that we're going to, E7 either, but it's a good connector because I am going to drop down and play the G sharp. And that note is in the E7. It's on the 3rd string, 1st fret there, right? When you're playing it in this position, the open position. But if you know this chord shape, you'll see that exact note right there. It's the 3rd, major 3rd of the E7. So when I get there, it really lets you know I'm following the chords. Right? And then from here, I'm just going to spell out more chord tones from E7. There's the B, the D, that's the flat 7. That's what gives it the 7 in its name. And then up to the E, the root. Now the chord changes to our 3rd chord in this 2-bar phrase, and it's A7. And we're going to keep that same vibe alive. We're going to really focus on calling out the chord tones. The chord tones here are going to be A, C sharp, E, and G. Let's take a look at how we use those in the solo. That's the phrase over A7. If we come up here, we're sliding up to the A. That's the roots. That makes sense. And then back down to the G. That's the G that's making this an A7 chord. That's the flat 7 tone. Then we're going to slide back down from E, which is a chord tone, but we're not featuring it. I'm really just moving to D, which I'm also not featuring. This is just sort of a passing tone. It's fine to play it. Then I drop down to C, which kind of gives me a little bit more of that a minor pentatonic feeling, but I'm really just hitting that, just visiting these 2 to do this really classic blues move and hammer on up from the C to the C sharp. So with respect to A7, that's the minor 3rd up to the major 3rd. Done so much, right? You hear that often in the blues. And this lick finishes there. Of course, we play the E for just a little bit of harmony there as we finish. Let's take a listen to the 2 bars now. could you tell when the chords were changing as I was playing that? One more time. Keep in mind, we're using the arpeggios as boundaries for the notes to play. We're not playing them up and down like you might practice them. We're using them to sound more melodic and connected to the chords. But what about when we want that bluesy, gritty sound? Here's an idea. Break free of the arpeggio and play a tried and true blues licks. We use these because they work, and sometimes in a solo, this is just what you need to grab the listener's attention and just really dig in. In the next 2-bar phrase, first I'm going to let the music breathe a little bit by strictly following the chord tones, but then I'm going to break from the arpeggio and chord tone idea and just play a really bluesy lick. For this next measure, we're going to follow the chords from D minor to A7. And if we take a look under the hood and really look at what's happening on strings 3 and 2, you'll see I'm playing the D and the F. And if we just strip away the chord, we can use this little shape. And the cool thing is when we change to A7, we can just move this back 1 fret. And those tones are right there in an A7. So it's a really cool way to call out this particular movement. So the part before we launch into a lick. And what we're going to do for that lick, I'll break it down and I'll tell you why we're going to use it. We're going to make a big fuss about landing on that G. So we've got 2 16th notes at the end of our split measure between D minor and A7. Just a little pickup move there. And I'm climbing from the D up to the E, and then I'm really, like I said, going to make a fuss about that G when I get there on the first string, 3rd fret. Then I'm just climbing back down and landing on that A. Now that A follows where the chords have moved. This entire measure is over D minor, so that A really works. And of course we played some D, but the other notes, not necessarily. And we even kind of bent that up on the D, which is the 1, which might sound out of tune, sound weird. You can do it if you want or not do it if you don't want to. But the idea here is that it's okay to toss out a lick that just kind of fits the moment. Now, I think this sounds pretty cool, and I think it works. So that's why we're going with that here. If we piece these together, we've got this part. And again, keep in mind our chords are going from D minor to A7 and then back to D minor here for these measures. And I'll play you into it. Think of it this way, chord tones help you stay grounded in the music, and a flashy blues lick reminds you of why you play the blues. What about when things get complicated, when the chords take you to an unexpected place? And maybe that doesn't happen in a standard 12-bar blues jam, but there are definitely some twists and turns in the down and out chord progression, which, speaking of that, there's a full tutorial on my arrangement of a fingerstyle version of down and out inside the My BGI membership. I share my biggest unlock with this song, which it has this seemingly random chord progression, but we make sense of it in the chorus. Plus, we work through 3 levels of a fresh fingerstyle arrangement. It's great for an early intermediate or an advanced picker looking to add a cool tune to their songbook. So check it out by becoming a member at the link below. Now, back to the question. What can we do when things get complicated? Simplify. This is a great time to stick to the familiar and stripped down sounds of the minor pentatonic scale. Notice in the example that you're about to hear how I leaned into the minor pentatonic scale pretty heavily in the last 4 bars. Alright, these are the chords that we're going to be soloing over, and our first lick is working around the 4 notes here from the G to the A, the C, and the D, with a couple of slide ins just to punch it up a little bit. And then we get out of position with this move as we climb up through this position here, and we set ourselves up to play some really simple, but to me, kind of punchy minor pentatonic sounds. And we're going to really think about it as the A minor pentatonic when the A7 chord rolls around. But then the chord changes to D7, and even though we're going to stay in the same position and use a lot of the same notes, there's a lot of overlap in the A minor and the D minor pentatonic scale. We're going to just feature notes a little bit differently. And then we wrap up with a more sweeter sound over the G7. So let's take a look after that climb. Right from the A minor pentatonic scale, it's nested right in here, right? Right, there's the A. So there's the minor third of A. All right, that's how we're slipping into and kind of moving with the music as it changes to A7. And then playing with those same notes as the music has changed to D7. Remember, there's a lot of overlap between the A minor pentatonic and the D minor pentatonic. Right? The intervals relative to the chord just change, and we're going to avoid that E. We don't want that. And I am going to reach up and make sure that I play the D once we're over the D7 measure, right? All right, after those moves, we get all the way up to what we're doing over the G. And this is a really sweeter sound that we're going to end this with. We're going up to the 11th fret. That's the B flat. So you might think, all right, well, that's the minor third of G we do in minor pentatonic. Not really. We're going to bend up to the B. Really cool thing. It's not all that different from moving from the minor third of the chord to the major third of the chord like we did here when we were playing over A7. We're just going to get that travel that a bend gets us. Again, we're starting from the 11th fret and we're trying to bend up and target that B. And then we just walk down. And then finally, end on an E. Why end on an E? Because it's a chord tone. There's that C major triad right there. It's the major third of C. It's a really sweet landing note to wrap us up here. Think about it. There's our E when we play a C major. There's one on top. When the chord changes, it's really nice to call out that chord change and really target that third of the chord, in this case E, third of C major. When soloing over something complicated, it helps to have a few safety nets. These 3 tips will help you hit the right notes and stay out of trouble. But there's something behind all of this, and it's the #1 thing that helps keep me from getting lost on the fretboard when I'm playing bluesy licks and solos. Watch this video next to find out what it is and how you can use it to massively level up your confidence on the fretboard. I'll see you there. Until then, practice smart and play on.